Looking like it's stabilizing a bit. Hello to everybody that's just joining. Welcome to today's webinar. Today we're going to be hosting a Bee City Spotlight webinar, which will be the first in hopefully many more to come. And this time we'll be showcasing pollinator initiatives in Guelph, Ontario. So we'll give it just a couple more minutes for people to stream in before we get started. And a note to anyone that's come in that wants to listen in French, interpretation is available, and to access the French audio, please just click on the interpretation icon, which will be at the bottom of the window, and just select French from there.
Bonjour à tous ceux qui viennent de se joindre à nous et bienvenue à ce webinaire. Aujourd'hui, nous sommes présents donc pour un webinaire Bee City Spotlight qui présentera les initiatives en faveur des pollinateurs à Guelph en Ontario. Nous allons laisser 1 minute environ aux participants pour qu'ils puissent se connecter avant de commencer. Et comme l'a dit Jordan, pour ceux qui voudraient écouter en français, l'interprétation est disponible. Et pour y accéder, pour accéder à l'audio en français, veuillez cliquer sur l'icône d'interprétation en bas de l'écran et sélectionner le français pour pouvoir profiter de la traduction.
Okay, I think we're about ready to go. So hello to everybody that's just joined. This afternoon, we're hosting our first Bee City Spotlight webinar. And this one will be featuring pollinator initiatives in the city of Guelph, Ontario. The aim with these Bee City Spotlight webinars is to showcase the actions that are being taken in municipalities all across Canada to protect pollinators. And today we're being joined by speakers from the city of Guelph, University of Guelph, and then also the nonprofit Pollination Guelph. So through all these speakers, we'll provide you with a glimpse into the wide range of activities happening across the city. And as a final reminder, if anyone would like to tune in French, please click on the interpretation icon at the bottom of the screen and select French from there.
Et donc, on rappelle encore une fois que si vous souhaitez écouter ce webinaire en français, il suffit de cliquer sur l'icône interprétation en bas de votre écran et sélectionner le français. Merci.
Thank you, Adele. And before we get into the content, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the land that we're seated on. So I'm based in Toronto, which is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. It's currently home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, and it's covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. I know we're participating from all across Canada today, so I invite you to reflect on the land that you're seated on as well. And as people on this land, may we all dedicate ourselves to moving forward in partnership, collaboration, and reconciliation as we learn together and contemplate the possibilities ahead. So, as I mentioned, we're delighted to have 4 speakers from Guelph, Ontario today who will share Guelph pollinator initiatives with us from all the different organizations that they represent. I'm going to introduce each of them more thoroughly in a moment, but we have Cranstone and Samantha Dupree from the city of Guelph. We have Lorne Whitmer from the local nonprofit Pollination Guelph. And we have Samantha Casey from the University of Guelph. So Cranstone joined Guelph's Forestry and Sustainable Landscapes team in 2019 after 25 years in private sector consulting, where he focused on master planning, policy development, and detailed design for municipalities, agencies, and private sector clients. Fascinated by nature since childhood, he went on to formal education in ecology, for which he completed a BSc at Western University, and landscape architecture, for which he completed an MLA at the University of Guelph. In 2021, he was recognized by peers at the Ontario Association of Landscape Architects with the Carl Borgstrom Award for service to the environment. His role with the city of Guelph includes leading the planning for the naturalization program, selecting and procuring plant materials, and assisting with community engagement. Samantha Dupree has been a community stewardship coordinator in Guelph, which actually has the highest number of park volunteers of any Canadian municipality per capita. It's very cool. She's been doing this since 2017. She's passionate about the importance of building relationships with nature and each other for the betterment of our relationships on this planet, and is continually inspired by her community. She's worked in environmental policy and program development for the last 10 years and has a diploma in restoration ecology and a BES in environmental studies from the University of Waterloo. Lorne Whitmer is the treasurer of Pollination Guelph and has been the director of that organization for 12 years. He's also on the board of Pollinator Partnership Canada and was one of the original directors of Bee City Canada. Now retired, Lorne previously had the opportunity to contribute to Ontario's Pollinator Health Action Plan and Strategy. He maintains a pollinator-friendly yard in Guelph and contributes to the upkeep of various habitat sites in the city. Lorne is excited to see how Bee City Canada is developing and growing across Canada. And Samantha Casey completed an environmental governance degree at the University of Guelph, and then quickly rejoined as a staff member to help improve sustainability on the U of G campus. She now holds a unique joint position at the University of Guelph as the Communications and Engagement Coordinator for the Department of Sustainability and the Sustainability Coordinator for Hospitality Services. Her favorite part of her work on campus is co-designing sustainability projects and conservation-focused initiatives with the University of Guelph students. So that covers our introductions. I expect we'll have some time at the end for questions. So if you have questions as you're hearing the presentations, please type them in the Q&A, which you should find at the bottom of the window. And we'll get to as many as we can at the end. And with that said, I will turn it over to Jay and Samantha from the City of Guelph to kick us off.
Great. Okay, well, thanks, Jordan, for the introduction and the opportunity to share what we're doing here in Guelph. We're really keen to share what we've been up to in the last several years since becoming a bee city in 2018, and really where we're heading. We're always learning, so we're keen to share what we've been doing, but we're also keen to learn what others are doing so that we can advance as well. I mean, we have lots of programs that are related to pollinator habitat and enhancing biodiversity and so on. And some of them were around before we became a bee city, and some have grown out of the time since we become a bee city. So quickly, what we're going to do in our part of the presentation is I'm going to talk a little bit about the big picture policy background, sort of where we're coming from, and then touch on several of our naturalization programs, kind of the more technical side of a few of them, how they fit together, including our invasive management program, naturalization planting, our native herbaceous program, and meadow mowing, which is something new for us this year. And then Samantha's going to take it on from there. And she's going to talk about more programs as well, highlight more programs as well, but really hitting on some of those that have a lot more of the community engagement and partnership side, like our community gardens program, healthy landscapes program, community stewardship, and a new one that we're looking to launch soon called Adopt a Space. And then she'll finish up with where we're going from there. So we don't have time to dig into too much detail on all of them, but really just want to hit some of the highlights. And in doing that, I just wanted to speak very briefly about our invasive management program, because it is something that we're doing quite separate, but it is really integrated into our naturalization strategies because it's part of the process. So we are, we're doing invasive management on a handful of key species, and then one of the objectives is to go back and put back better, so plant back better species after the invasive management is done. So our mandate is really pretty deeply rooted in a number of our key policies, starting at the high end with our strategic plan and our official plan, which includes something called OPA 42, which is our natural heritage strategy. So those set out some of the key high level goals, and then that's further articulated in master plans and strategy plans that come out of that, including our Natural Heritage Action Plan, our Urban Forest Management Plan, and most recently our Parkland System Master Plan. And what these really do is they take it to more detail and provide some of the key objectives and actions and timelines for some of those actions. And some of the programs that we've been developing and enhancing really are coming out of those plans. So some of those include our forest and natural area enhancement plans, the invasive species management, our naturalization planting, something that's fairly new, our native plant propagation program that we're quite excited about, very new meadow maintenance, and then some of the programs that Samantha is going to talk about related to healthy landscapes, community gardens, and community stewardship, where we're really getting the public involved and engaged, because we know that we can't do this all ourselves, and having the partners really has helped to drive us to where we are, and is going to help us move on from there. So like any other city, Guelph it's a pretty big place when you start to think about all of the spaces and places throughout the city. And it can be pretty daunting to try to figure out where we should be doing naturalization at the bigger scale, and then also right down to the site level. So for a number of years, the city has been using GIS for asset management, primarily for infrastructure, and then more recently our parks infrastructure. And then very recently with our team, we now have the ability to use GIS for our planning for naturalization and restoration. Up until now, we've been using a more traditional filing system. And it was, as I noted, it was quite daunting to kind of figure out where we've been, where plantings have been historically, and where we'd like to go. But now with the power of GIS, we've been able to map all of these locations. So we're still finding locations that were planted a number of years ago, but we're mapping all of these locations and including details of what was done, when it was done, who did it. So that sets some of the big picture, but then we're also able to overlay this with some of our other key policies, like our natural heritage strategy, and ecological land classification, as well as what we're doing on the invasive side. So we can kind of see how all those things, how all those pieces fit together at the really sort of the 30,000 foot level, and identify places where we would like to build significant corridors for wildlife movement, for habitat and pollinator habitat and so on at that kind of high level, and then zoom right down to the site level to figure out exactly what we want to do on each site. So we're using that for our own purposes, but then we're also able to use that for internal communication. So at Guelph, we have an internal working group called the Ecological Restoration Implementation Committee, which has representatives from some of our other key disciplines throughout the city. So we meet a couple of times a year, and it's our job, Samantha and my job and our team, to identify the sites, figure out what we want to do there, when we want to do it, who's going to be doing the planting, and then we are taking that and sharing that with our own committee to just get their to vet it with them, get their perspective, and also understand if there are any key policies that we need to be adhering to. Are there any other work that's been done in the background that needs to be incorporated into that work? And then we're also able to use information from this system to communicate outside of the city with our partners and with the public and council and so on. Naturalization planting, it really is kind of the backbone of the whole program, and it's something that began in the 1990s. And primarily, until very recently, primarily that was through community partnerships, through our community partners that were doing a lot of the work, as well as obligations that developers have, for instance, for naturalized buffers and so on with new developments. And more recently, we've been able to really ramp that up with the mandate through the Urban Forest Management Plan and the Natural Heritage Action Plan. So just a few a few numbers on where we've been quite recently and where we're at this year. In 2021, we planted about 6,000 native trees and shrubs and at about 2,000 grasses and wildflowers at 40 sites throughout the city. And this year, we think we're on target to exceed 10,000 native trees and shrubs and over 2,500 wildflowers and grasses. And if we add to that what our community partners are doing now that they're back from COVID, we expect them to do about another 5,000 trees and shrubs and about 2,000 wildflowers and grasses. We have a palette of about 65 native trees and shrub species that we're using. It's about a 40 to 60% breakdown and about 60% or 60 species of wildflowers and grasses. Our native herbaceous program is something that we're quite excited about. It's an action that grew out of our Natural Heritage Action Plan. We started in 2019 with a pilot of just a few flats in the greenhouse of seeds that we purchased. And this year we've grown that to over 4,000 plants. And along the way, what we've learned is that we have a great source of seed right in our own backyard. So we're collecting all of the seed for our program just by walking on our trails and through our natural areas. Plus, we're also getting some through partnerships with Pollination Guelph, for instance, who's sharing some seed that they have at some of their sites. So a great lesson that we learned there is you got the seed right in your own backyard. You just need to know what it is and how to collect it and how to get it ready for planting. And we've also done a lot of collaboration with our horticulture team. So we're collecting and cleaning and then handing the seed over for them to stratify and plant out in the greenhouse. And then we take it on from there out in the cold frames and then distribute it to community gardens for our own programs and to some of our partners and so on. And as a part of what's happening, our horticulture department is also making some changes. So they are modifying some of their traditional planting beds, some of the planters to include native species, and even in some of our road medians, if they are finding volunteers like common milkweed that are showing up, we're just leaving it in there now. So it's quite exciting. We're doing some of these as single species pots, but but we're also working with some blends. So we're taking any of our excess seed and then we're sowing that into the pots as blends for upland, grass mixes, and then more moist meadows. And then meadow mowing is something, again, new to us this year. So we're trialing meadow mowing in some selected locations throughout the city. Some of them are opportunistic, and then some are more related to policy. This one in particular, in the north end of the city, is more policy related. So we had an EIS that said that this area should be maintained as meadow because it's part of a larger meadow complex that could support grassland birds. So we decided we were getting to a point where we had to do something because there's some invasion of buckthorn that was happening. So we've divided it up into four quadrants. And the objective was to mow it on kind of a cyclical nature, one each year. And we worked with our turf group to get the mowing done. And actually this year we decided to do 2 of the quadrants, or half the site, as opposed to the 4 sites year after year, because the mowing went quite well. And here's a shot of the meadow mown area in progress. It was really important to us to get the communication out there with the residents about what we're doing, why we're doing it, when we're doing it, in terms of timing and so on, related to the breeding bird season, also related to the operational opportunities that our own grass cutting crew had, so when they had time to do it. So we prepared some messaging that went out as individual notices to surrounding residents, but then also a lot of social media posts as well. And cross our fingers, to date, we haven't had concerns about what was going on. Instead, we've had some compliments about the actions that we're taking. So now I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Samantha, who's going to continue on.
There we go. I think I got the slides up. So I'll just pick up where Jay left off. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the community engagement we do and all the important partners that we work with for all kinds of naturalization projects that we do. And most of the pollinator habitat creation projects we're doing are on city property, are like public lands, parks and trails and things like that. But we also do work with partners on school grounds and institutional properties. And we couldn't do all of this amazing work without some of our amazing partners. The two biggest partners we work with, I have a bunch of their sort of logos on the screen here, but are Trees for Guelph and Pollination Guelph. And Trees for Guelph for many years has been doing trees and shrub plantings with school groups, and they continue to do that. And Jay kind of alluded to the sort of numbers they're doing, about 5,000 a year. So they're a huge planting effort. And then Pollination Guelph has been a huge powerhouse in creating pollinator habitat in Guelph. They've created a lot of demonstration pollinator gardens. They've had amazing expertise that has helped us in the city as we grow our programs, and has helped a lot of other grassroots community groups that are looking into doing similar work. And we are trying to support all of these groups as the city as much as we can, because it gets easier to do it together. And we're finding that obviously it's a lot easier to create habitat. One-off community planting events are things that are easier to get volunteers to come out to. Grassroots group people reach out to us all the time saying they want to do a one-time planting. So we don't have trouble engaging the community in that kind of work. But we are learning that it's hard to keep that engagement up for the hard work of maintenance that happens for these wild sites. And that's why we try to play a role to affiliate community groups or grassroots groups who come approach us to make sure that they connect with existing other organizations, if possible, that are already operating in Guelph, and that expands the available support to them in terms of volunteer funding, insurance, all kinds of those technical parts. It makes it easier if they're affiliated with one or more groups that have more resources. But that's not to say that we as a city don't also support community groups that approach us directly. If they are not comfortable affiliating or connecting with other groups, we also will be happy to work with whoever approaches us. That's recently been the case with an Indigenous food sovereignty group that approached us that was maybe not quite comfortable right at the first with affiliating with existing sort of networks that we have, and we're working with them on projects for habitat creation. So that's kind of most of the projects. The idea, whoops. Oh, here we go. Next slide. So that's projects on public land, and we also want to engage the community on projects in their own backyards on private land. So that since 2017, the city's also had a program called the Healthy Landscapes Program. And in that program, residents can sign up to have a expert staff person visit their house and look at their front yard, their backyard, and do a little bit of an assessment for site-specific selection of plants that would work well and create a healthy landscape. And with the focus of the program being on selecting plants that are low water usage or that are drought tolerant, and also plants that are pollinator friendly. And they get a little report after the visit. You can see the link down here so that residents can sign up. And it's been it's one of our most popular programs. And for residents that don't necessarily have private space to garden in, but still want to be involved in this kind of thing, or for even people that are just wanting to give back to the community and be involved in community, we have a network of community gardens throughout the city. Most of these gardens, many of them are on city like parkland, but also a lot of them are on schoolyards and or institutional lands. And part of my role at the city is to facilitate the community leaders who lead these projects and maintain them. So they're all run and really maintained by volunteers with very little help from me, but I do act as a resource for the volunteer network as a whole and directing what happens on city property, and also helping start and spark new ideas for creating more of these projects. Though there's a map here, the link is at the bottom of the screen there, where we have a list of all the current operating community garden projects and the different kinds of them. You can see the icons on the screen here, and you can find out more about each of them if you went through on the map. And I thought I'd just mention that even though a lot of the gardens are what you would think of as a vegetable garden, and people might not think of those as pollinator habitat. We've been working with all the community gardens to make sure that they contain at least some part of them that is focused on pollinators. So I'm happy to report that now 80% of the community gardens include a little pollinator patch in them where they're growing plants just for pollinator forage. And those plants have been all donated through the city's native plant propagation program that Jay spoke about. So that's great. We're really proud of that. And we currently also have about 6 standalone volunteer-led pollinator garden projects that are on city property too. And we were inspired by the way that the community gardens program has been so successful and continues to grow. And we've also found that since the pandemic, there's more and more desire for people to get out in nature and get hands-on and care for habitat. So we are looking at trying to formalize how people do that and using the gardens program as a sort of a model to adopt wild spaces and formalizing that without it being too prescriptive. So I just thought I'd go through a little quick example here of where this has happened. One project that sort of happened organically or informally as a sort of a pilot, and then we're thinking that we are hoping this will grow into a more formalized program. So this is a map here of Burns Drive Park, which is a park in the city of Guelph. And in about 2019, a community member approached us with wanting to start a community garden in this park. And so she submitted the application process that we have. We engaged with the neighborhood community. We did surveys. We made sure it was located in a way that it wasn't interfering with the playground, which was being replaced. We made sure there was enough volunteer engagement, and we helped create a whole committee so that the garden would be well maintained. And they even started work on creating a neighborhood group to sort of support this. And so it grew, and they were interested in doing more. It's a very involved community. And so we noticed there was an opportunity in this woodlot or wild space in the park where there was a lot of invasives in there. It was also a lot of Scots pine that are in decline and are being removed. And then we thought it could be a great renewal project to put in more invasive species, or not invasive, native species to enhance it. And we sort of gave them a little bit of a plan. You can see on the right-hand side to guide their work. We connected them with a local NGO called Ignatius Old Growth Forest Project. And they connected them with a bunch of grant opportunities. They provided training. And there was a whole bunch of stewardship events that happened over the last couple of years. And you can see some photos here, sort of the before and after of all the native trees and shrubs that went in. There was also herbaceous species that went in on the outside of part of the forest. And then through the forest, there was a mulch trail that was built and periodic spots where invasives were removed and replaced with native species. So I just wanted to end it with looking forward and what are we looking to continue to do. We're always trying to improve our naturalization program, as Jay mentioned. We're looking at places where we've planted certain species, which ones are doing well, which ones are doing not so well, especially with climate change, and trying to adapt that as necessary. We're trying to expand the partnerships that we build. We've recently been reaching out more to the Arboretum, which is through the University of Guelph. They have a lot of programs that are really neat where they're doing breeding of different kinds of trees that are disease resistant or species at risk. And we're looking at ways that we can host some of those in some key areas, trees with a story, in some of our community projects as well, or in our natural spaces. And as I mentioned, we're trying to formalize our Adopt a Space program in the next year or so. And we're even looking forward to next year, hopefully giving a backyard tree giveaway program to increase our canopy and forage for trees. And I just thought I'd put up here really quickly the contact information for me and Jay in case anyone wants to follow up after the webinar with specific questions about anything. And I will turn it over to our next speaker, which is Lorne Whitmer with Pollination Guelph.
Is the screen share working for everyone?
It's working for me. We're good?
Perfect. Good to go.
Okay, and Jordan, you're going to give me a little help with the slides.
Yep, for sure.
Okay, we'll jump right in then. So I want to thank Bee City Canada for this opportunity to profile Pollination Guelph today, along with our partners in the city of Guelph. As you can see from the title slide, we've been active in Guelph and beyond since 2008. So I think we were one of the originals in terms of advocating and supporting the conservation of pollinators and their habitats. And frankly, being in Guelph is one reason for a lot of our success. There's just a lot of resources and interest in the city for things related to the environment generally and also to pollinators specifically. So next slide, Jordan, please. So here's a screenshot. These are the 8 current board members from Pollination Guelph. We have various backgrounds, some academic, some education, some working with cities, nonprofits, private sector. So we have a lot of talent, and we have been putting it to very good use over the last few years. Next. So I just thought it would be helpful, assuming that there's folks from all across Canada watching this presentation today, to show exactly where Guelph is. We're not huge cities, but it's helpful to see where we are. We're in southern Ontario, so we're just close to what's called the Carolinian zone. There's a lot of different species that you encounter in our city, a lot of different pollinator species along with the plants. Yeah, that's where we are. And I mean, there's some advantages to being there and some challenges, but we're making it work. Next slide. So about us, Guelph, the origins of the organization started in 2008 following a University of Guelph hosted Pollinator conference. We are federally incorporated, nonprofit. We are a registered charity. You've already seen our 8 volunteer board members. We don't have any paid staff, and we totally rely on the work of volunteers to achieve our goals. We don't have a huge annual budget, but enough to do some interesting things with. About $10,000 to $15,000 a year is raised and spent. It varies from year to year, obviously. In terms of fundraising, we get donations, grants, sponsorships. There's an annual plant sale that we do with partners. We sell books and habitat signs. And our vision is that Guelph is a world model for the promotion and protection of pollinators and their habitat, and leading the way in environmental sustainability. That was created 13, 14 years ago, and I think it's still very applicable today. So fun facts, I've already mentioned we were one of the first community-based groups to focus on conserving pollinators. And again, part of our success, I think, is having collaborated with the city right from the beginning. We've been able to help them with, promote their agenda in terms of biodiversity and natural spaces. The city has also been able to provide us with a variety of supports and resources, which have been really helpful. Our first major initiative, which is still ongoing, is Eastville Landfill. It was decommissioned, and we have been installing native species and plants there over a number of years. There's also ongoing monitoring of species, not just pollinators, but also birds. So we have some data and history on that. Pollination Guelph did contribute actually to the Guelph application for Bee City Canada. So we like to pat ourselves on the back for that one. And we've received different awards and grants over the years for the work that we've been doing. North American Pollinator Partnership Campaign, the Society for Organic Urban Land Care, Ontario Nature, and grants from various organizations. Next. So our mandate is fivefold: conservation, community and engaging the community, education, raising awareness, research, advocacy are the other two. And I will talk about each one of those a little more as we go through. So conservation, our focus is on native pollinators and also on the planting of native Ontario plant species. We have, as I think has been mentioned already, a number of different habitat sites. We have one at Hospice Wellington, the Gosling Pollinator Gardens. We have one on city property at an emergency services center, which is quite large, about an acre. We are partnering with Electra Utilities with their offices in Guelph. We have smaller sites on the Trans-Canada Trail. I've already mentioned Eastview, Riverside Park. And we also support other communities, groups that may be installing pollinator habitat. The picture that's there is at St. Ignatius. About 4 years ago, we helped them install a fairly major pollinator habitat. Next. Community, already talking about the different groups that we partner with. Always good to get more people involved. I've mentioned the annual plant sale, which is quite a big deal now. Raised over $10,000, split 3 ways with our partners. We have a community grants program, which is now in its 3rd year, where we provide grants to communities in Guelph and Wellington County, who typically are installing pollinator habitat. But yeah, so pollinator habitat, and hope to continue with that program, but we'll evaluate it to see how effective it is. And we've been providing support for groups and organizations outside of Guelph, and I'll talk some more about that later. So later being now, education. So we are out there on many different levels. We've got a website with online resources and videos, social media, webinars such as this one. We have our own series. We have in-person presentations and booths. We've created a number of different printed materials that we've made available. Book sales, mostly from an author, Heather Holm, who specializes in pollinators. We sell habitat signage just so that people don't have to constantly explain why their boulevard bed doesn't look pristine. And prior to COVID, we did sponsor an annual symposium. Maybe someday we'll pick that up again. Research is not a huge part of our mandate, but nevertheless, as part of our grants program, we have been giving grants to pollinator researchers, and we do monitoring of species on site. Always looking for more opportunities in that area. Advocacy, I've mentioned the importance of the relationship with the city, and that is both city staff as well as elected officials. We've been fortunate to have a good working relationship with council members, including the mayors, over the last few years, which has helped us get a number of things accomplished. We've encouraged the private sector to take action, for example, reaching out to Electra, and in Guelph, the Cooperator, a big insurance company. We've made submissions to provincial governments on things like the use of neonicotinoids, pesticides, and on the pollinator health strategy, and also reaching out regularly to local media to profile pollinators and related initiatives, which has been quite successful. So just as a reality check, it's not always easy saving pollinators. What certainly this year we've discovered with the changing climate that many of our habitat projects have suffered because of the lack of water, where we don't have water, and certainly the long hot days that we've had without rain is now causing us to reconsider what are we planting where, because some things if this continues, just may no longer be viable in the locations that we have. So we need to think of alternatives. So we've been around for quite a while. Volunteer recruitment and retention, I think like any volunteer group, any nonprofit, it's an ongoing challenge. Burnout, I mean, folks who've been around for a long time and been doing all the work, again, like any other small organization, I think that's something that needs to be recognized and addressed if possible. And just the long-term maintenance of habitat sites that was mentioned earlier. Everybody loves to go on a planting day, but 3 years in, when you have to weed yet again, some of that enthusiasm evaporates. So that's a challenge. And just fundraising. I've mentioned some of the ways that we have been doing it, but I think these things are probably applicable to many of the organizations that are tuned in today. And just saying this to let you know that you're not alone out there, that a lot of us are dealing with this. And to end on a happier note, I just thought I'd put this cute little picture in, and knowing that knowing we can make a difference for the future helps to keep us going. So seeing a butterfly and a happy child in a pollinator habitat just makes you want to keep going. So. And I would encourage you to check out our website, Pollination Guelph. There's a link there where if you want to contact me or other people in the organization, you can just send us a message. So yeah, pollinationguelph.ca. Thanks for the opportunity to present today.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lorne, for sharing all about what the incredible Pollination Guelph is doing. And hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be now talking a little bit about what's happening at the University of Guelph on our campus. So I'm really excited to be here today because back in 2018, when we became a bee campus, I was one of the students that got to be involved in kind of leading that initiative and championing it. So it's really fun to now be able to sit here as a staff member and share a little bit on what we've been actually been able to accomplish with that designation and what we've held true in our original application. So it's quite exciting to come kind of full circle here. And so today my presentation will be focused on mainly what the Sustainability Office is doing, what kind of initiatives and projects we've been getting up to since we become a bee campus. But I would like to acknowledge that there's so many different departments and groups on campus that I'll be kind of shedding some light on that do really incredible work. And we're working away on our website to share all of the neat stuff that's happening related to bees, pollinator conservation, and pollinator health on our website. So this is just more of a spotlight for, I guess, the Sustainability Office's work. Very excited to be able to dive in a little deeper. And how I kind of structured this presentation for today is actually going back to our original application for when we became a bee campus. We're going to be looking at some of those commitments and actions and what we've been doing to kind of hold true to them. And hopefully if you're interested in becoming a bee campus, or if you're a bee campus, hopefully this will kind of shed a little spotlight on what we've been doing and what you can do as a bee campus. So to kind of set the scene, I'll go back to 2018 when we first became a designated bee campus. So as it says there, Canada's Food University designated bee campus. It was quite exciting for us as Canada's Food University to become designated. And a lot of what our designation kind of came up to, and a lot of why we were so excited around it was because we had such great success from having so many champions across the university really interested in helping make this designation come true. So I know I was speaking to other campuses, sometimes there's that struggle of not knowing who to go to first or finding those kind of allies, but we were really lucky in that sense. And I think that's kind of come throughout all of the presentations today, that Guelph is very lucky. We have such a great privilege to have such a sustainability culture. and a culture of caring for each other, but also for the environment and pollinators here in the city, as well as on campus. So that was something that we really attribute our success to. Is when we found the idea, we actually came across it through BC Canada's social media. So the power of social media, which I know there's a question in the chat we'll be answering later, but the power of social media when it comes to conservation and promoting initiatives. So we were able to find it through social media, and we had that conversation. So a lot when we started to look at what we were doing, it was kind of that conversation of what could become a bee campus. And what we first did when we saw the application process was look at what we were actually doing, and then what we weren't doing, and what we could be doing a lot better. And so looking across campus, we kind of identified these champions, and a lot of the champions were especially coming from our research areas. Like we have Dr. Nigel Rain in the Rain Lab, and pollinator conservation and health. But we also had tons of champions across campus at the staff level, also doing things like our grounds department. Our grounds department is honestly phenomenal humans. They make us well known for our campus. And so we were able to have a lot of them actually get right on board and share what they were already doing with their planning when we decided to become a bee campus, doing things like increasing tree canopy cover to have more fruiting and flowering species. The University of Guelph campus already banned pesticide use before a lot of the provincial bans came in. And so we already had that kind of culture and that kind of drive to do more and actually document and formalize it. So that was something really nice when we became a bee campus, is that it was kind of a way to celebrate and recognize what we were already doing through that. So something I encourage other campuses to do if you are looking is look at what you're already currently doing when it comes to doing your bee campus designation, and then look to the future. A lot of what I also looked into was looking into applying theory and research into action. So that's one of my things I love most about working on campus, that we have a lot of incredible researchers and folks interested in applying their research into practice right here on campus. You might be familiar with, or a term that's commonly used is using campus as a living lab. So that's something that we've been using, which I'll be sharing throughout the rest of the presentation, is that idea of actually using our campus as a living lab. And a huge part of our bee campus designation is that we were able to really embed it into our strategy and engagement plan at the sustainability office. Obviously, with the sustainability office being kind of a central hub for sustainability here at the University of Guelph. And sustainability to us is the social, economic, and environmental pillars. So we were able to really kind of embed it there into our designation. So we could be that centralized body to make sure that what we were putting in our application, we could kind of see come through. And so I wanted to share a little bit about how we were celebrating pollinators. This is one of the things I absolutely loved when we started doing our application in the beginning, because I often find celebration is something overlooked. There's often talks on awareness and action, but what about actually celebrating? And so for the last few years, with the COVID-19 pandemic forcing a lot of our work online and virtual, we've been heavily celebrating online, and we got quite creative with how we do that. We have two things here for Pollinator Week. That's something we look forward to every year. This past year, we did giveaways and social media posts and events online, as well as some in-person tabling, which was quite fun. But we also have our Seed Festival, so our Guelph Campus Conservation Seed Festival, which we launched in March 2022. And that was to look at essentially celebrating native plants and pollinators, and to celebrate the beneficial relationships between them. What's really exciting is that we're bringing that back in the fall. So kind of nice that we had the spring talking about planting and getting people ready for the summer months, but then also in the fall, we're talking about the importance of fall plantings and what we can be doing while it's quite cold here in Southern Ontario for the winter months as well, to get ready for planting again. So that Seed Festival we have for coming up in October. It's going to be starting on World Habitat Day, which is Monday, October 3rd, and we'll be running for a full week. There'll be lots of public events, so I definitely recommend checking it out. We open those up to anyone, no matter if you have an affiliation with the University of Guelph or not. Those will all be posted on our social media, which we'll be sharing at the end. But we're very excited about the Seed Festival because it's been a really great conversation around the importance of seed saving, as well as the importance of native pollinators and plants. So having that kind of conversation of all of this together. And we've seen great success with our March one, with many of it being virtual. So we're very excited to have some in-person opportunities coming in the fall as well. And a full itinerary of that will be shared a little later on our social media. So I definitely recommend checking that at the end. Up next, I'll talk a little bit about promoting education about pollinators. So this was another one of the actions required for the Bee Campus application. And so something that we've been working on since we have been designated is increasing our education around pollinators. So whenever we do any events now, we're always sharing the work that we're doing around pollinators. We share about our Bee Campus status. We often recruit volunteers that way too. We find that there has been quite a few events, which is really nice with Guelph having such a really great focus on pollinators and so many opportunities to engage with community members, such as like Guelph Bug Day. We were able to actually go to Guelph Bug Day this summer, which is probably one of our favorite events that Guelph hosts in our University of Guelph Arboretum, which got a shout out a little earlier. And we were giving out these posters there on the side there, the native pollinators of Guelph, as well as sharing some really fun facts with those in attendance. We bring those to every event, so not just our bug focused ones, but every event we're always there. And those native pollinator of Guelph posters have been quite popular and have been given out and we're quite excited to see them hanging up in people's offices. We've had a couple teachers asked to print them for their classes. It's so quite fun to use those for an engagement tactic. And then that poster that you see there with the pollinator fun facts to share with friends. That's one of the signs that's actually going up on campus. Very excited because it's going to be going up in October during our seed festival. So those will actually be going up on campus. Those are just one of the 5 designs we have. And then we're also working with Bee City Canada to get some really fun Bee Campus signs that'll be going up as well to increase our education around pollinators by having them kind of throughout the University of Guelph campus. One thing that's really fun as well is that we do have a brand new initiative that's a student-led community science initiative focused on biodiversity conservation, and it's as you can see there from the logo on the side. I definitely recommend checking out their Instagram if you're interested in that. If you are from Western University or you're a Western alumni, this is very much inspired by the biodiversity inventory from Western, which is quite exciting because it's essentially having folks wander around our campus and then using their digital devices to essentially take photos of what they're seeing and then documenting it through community science applications such as like iNaturalist or Seek. And then we have a profile for the University of Guelph campus. And so we're having folks actually go out and wander and spend time in nature connecting to it and then also helping document and seeing what's there. We did one this summer through Mission Monarch, which I know Bee City Canada had a really great webinar. It was recorded if you want to check out the incredible work of Mission Monarch. So we actually did some BioBlitz this summer for Mission Monarch earlier in August, and it was a huge success with our students and a lot of folks who never participated in community science really enjoyed that. So we're excited that those students that actually loved that this summer have actually since then created this campus biodiversity inventory, which we're excited to use to also help kind of inform the work we're doing with the pollinator habitat action plan. So one thing I wanted to highlight with this next section of the action section of what we're actually doing here on campus, because a huge part of being a bee campus is essentially creating habitat and using our space that we have to help protect pollinators through that habitat creation and restoration on campus. So we were incredibly lucky to work with a ton of different groups at the Sustainability Office, one of which being WWF Canada, who actually supported us in creating a seed orchard, which we first planted last fall. A seed orchard being a place where plants of known wild origin are grown for the purpose of harvesting and distributing their seeds. These medium to large scale gardens are like living seed banks with different plant species clustered and labeled for efficient seed collecting. Think of a densely planted veggie garden or farm field, but filled with blocks of native plants. And that's a quote directly from Ryan Godfrey, who's a WWF conservation specialist who assisted us in the creation of our seed orchard. Our seed orchard, we're very excited about because it's something that we're continuing to work on. I'll be very honest, we did quite a few struggles this summer with the weather, with it being so hot, and a lot of what we planted that we thought would take a lot better with the heat and the lack of water source where we planted didn't do so well. So we're excited to have students work with us, and we're going to be working with a couple of classes as well to actually work on that problem of how do we plant for the future, essentially in these areas, and how can we spread those seed orchards. And I'll be sharing a little bit about our plan with the seed orchard, and there's a lot of information too on our website about the seed orchard, and we're always open for questions about that as well. But a seed orchard is planted behind our largest student residence here at the University of Guelph, and it was actually an identified space through back when we became a bee campus. We had an undergraduate student, Sage Handler, who worked with Dr. Nigel Rain to actually identify areas on campus where we could improve our pollinator habitat and foraging areas. And this was one of the areas identified. So we're really excited to have that research actually lean on when we were picking our spot for our seed orchard. And so very excited about our seed orchard. And that's something really neat because, as we know, and I think Jay, you said it perfectly, there's so much in our backyard for us to look to. So a lot of what we're actually hoping to do is kind of create that source in our own backyard here on campus, and then actually create what I'll speak to next in our future plans is a seed library for campus. So folks are actually able to collect seeds both from our seed orchard and also donate seeds to the seed library to use in their own spaces. So we're very excited for that seed library. So that's something for our future plans, as well as a few other things that I'll talk to next. But that's one thing that's really nice and neat is that we're able to kind of plan for the future now, that especially that we have actions happening again on campus. So a few things here that I'll touch on because you'll see various logos. One thing that we're very excited about is working with hospitality services. So as Canada's Food University, there's such an incredible importance to speak about the importance of pollinators when it comes to food systems, and also talking about food sustainability in these conversations. So we're going to be actually working with hospitality services to put up promotional signage in the units talking about the importance of pollinators when it comes to our food systems. So something very exciting because there's so many people who come and eat our food every day on campus. So using that kind of visual space in those areas there, we're very excited for those connections. So those will also be available through social media as well. So if anyone's interested in what we're sharing, those will be posted on our social media. BirdSafe Guelph is another really incredible organization who's actually supported by a pollinator grant given by Pollination Guelph. So again, coming full circle. We're excited to be further working with BirdSafe Guelph, which is a community organization in Guelph, working to essentially make the city and the campus more bird friendly. Birds obviously being another incredible pollinator. So we're going to be working with BirdSafe Guelph to continue making our campus more bird friendly. We've adopted bird friendly designs into our new building codes and standards. And now we're working to retrofit more space on campus, but also see how we can do that in a way that also connects to our pollinator habitat here at the University of Guelph. So some really neat overlaps between the work that we're doing, which is quite fun, looking at all those intersections and how we can work together with the different groups and the different focuses here. One of the last things for going forward is our B City Campus Working Group is that we are going to be revitalizing our B City Campus Working Group. So if you have any University of Guelph staff, faculty, alumni, or students listening in, stay tuned for that because we'll be doing an open call. And we're very excited because many of our ideas have come from folks very passionate about that, who've come forward with their ideas of what they'd like to see on campus, which is my favorite part of working here at the university, at the Sustainability Office. So those are a little about our future plans. And now I'm going to share our Let's Stay in Touch screen. So definitely recommend taking a picture or a screenshot. Here's all of our information. So if you have any further questions, want to check it out, want further info on anything I talked on, you can definitely find it on our website or through our social media. I have both my personal one there or the Sustainability Office. And we always welcome questions. And if you are a bee campus or hoping to be a bee campus and you have any questions, I'm always happy to speak to how we became one and what we've been doing in further detail. Yeah, thank you so much for BC Canada for having us. It's really an honor to be able to speak to what we've been up to. So I'm going to pass it back to Jordan now.
Thanks so much, Sam. And yeah, thank you to everyone for all the awesome presentations. I want to be cognizant of time. So we've got one question I see has appeared twice. So I will pose that one in the last couple of minutes we have left. But then this is gonna be recorded and posted to YouTube. So if anyone has more questions, you can reach out by email. But I did see one question asked twice, which I believe should be posed to Jay, potentially Samantha. And it was, can you explain the benefit of meadow mowing?
Sure, thanks, Jordan. So I'll start and Samantha may add to it. And that's a great question. So I would start by saying that's one of the things that we're trying to learn a little bit more about, what some of those benefits will be. So the reason that we're doing it in a couple of places, as I mentioned, is One, some of it's driven by policy of the individual places that we are mowing, whether it's in a recommendation in another plan to do that, or in the case of our Eastview site, it is a former landfill, so it needs to remain as grassland without woody vegetation on it. So we're doing it in some other areas to stop or hold succession where it is, and stop the invasion of some of the some woody plant species. Some are ultimately they would be desirable, but there are a number that aren't, like European buckthorn. So we're using that as one of our management strategies for buckthorn, and trying to learn about that. And I guess overall, I guess I would answer that by saying that it's also part of providing a diversity of habitats. I mean, we don't want to, and we don't want to create woodland cover everywhere. You know, we want to have some mowing in terms of some meadow areas maintained in terms of keeping habitat. But we're learning as we go. So you know, maybe don't have the definitive answer to that, and some of it is some experimenting at the same time. So
Yeah, and maybe I can just jump into with like, so historically, our understanding is that in places that in Ontario where there would have been meadow or prairie, they would have been maintained as meadow or prairie probably through forest fire, or not forest fire, grassland fires. And some of those might have been started by Indigenous people, part of them might have been natural, but we can't really maintain the habitats in the urban area. We're not, right now we aren't looking at doing prescribed burns. So that's how we settled on mowing as sort of the next best renewal or maintenance method for those sites. And some of the things that we've looked into through different research has also suggested that as long as you're not mowing the entire site, that you can be helped through mowing. You can reduce the amount of non-native invasive plant, or even herbaceous plants, and even do some renewal of the existing native plants, depending on the timing of when you mow and how often. So, and as long as you're not mowing the whole thing, you're still maintaining patches of refuge for pollinators and other wildlife. So we are not mowing any of our meadows, like blanket the whole thing, just to be clear. We're rotating, and it's not every year, it's on a rotational basis.
Thank you so much. And I do see it's a few minutes past the half hour, so I just want to be mindful of time for everyone. I see there's a few questions that we haven't been able to get to, but again, definitely encourage people to reach out after the webinar to ask more questions to either me or any of the speakers. So thank you again so much to all the speakers for the really great work that you're doing in Guelph for all the pollinators. And then two, of course, taking your time to share it with us today. And also I want to thank everybody else who tuned in and took the time to listen and hear about all this incredible work. I mentioned before that the webinar is being recorded. It'll be recorded in both English and French. So we're going to have both of those up on our YouTube channel pretty shortly. And I'll make sure to send out an email to everybody with the links to those. And otherwise, yeah, that concludes the webinar. So I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day and that you all stay tuned for upcoming BCD Canada webinars. Thank you so much.